I think the past 2 years is more than enough evidence to show you guys that Western leaders, our leaders, are extremely incompetent. It's as if they're just winging it and they don't really know what they're doing. Now, if you look at the past 2 years, the way they handled the pandemic, the lockdowns, the social unrest, the soaring energy and food prices, and more recently, the conflict in Ukraine, well, you're gonna start to wonder, how did these guys get elected in the first place? Why did we elect them in the first place? Or why did the majority elect them in the first place? Well, in this video, we're going to examine why that is the case. Now, the reasons why these people are in power. So, first things first, most of these guys have had very easy lives. I mean, look, most of them have come from middle class to upper middle class to even rich backgrounds. So that means they've had it very easy. These guys are the folks that went to private school, or perhaps they went to boarding school, and again, they've never had to work a day in their lives. They've never had to worry about food, the price of gas in the gasoline station, or look at the prices of food in the grocery store. Well, they just buy it outright. Or in most cases, it's not even them who will have to buy it. They have to tell their nanny, or perhaps they tell their maid to buy the food, or tell their driver to load up on the gas. Yeah, these guys are royalties, basically. So, what's the consequence of this? Well, the obvious. They have zero connection with their constituents. So, if you don't understand the plight of everyday people, how are you going to make sure that the decisions that you make, the legislations that you pass, the policies that you implement are in the best interest of the working class people or the everyday person? You're not going to have that kind of drive to really make good at what you do because you don't understand the predicament that they find themselves in. That is the electorate. So, yeah. And the thing about having an easy life is that you're impervious, completely detached from the realities of life. Because by definition, you've had it very easy. You're shielded from the realities, the harsh, cold realities about life. Now, because of this disconnect between the leaders and the populace, inevitably there's going to be a clash of interests, and the leadership class will just not know what to do. Okay. Now, the second reason why these leaders are so incompetent is obviously because they lack empathy. Well, not obviously. They don't know that they lack empathy. Because again, most of these guys are either complete cucks or psychopaths. They can never picture themselves in the shoes of another person. You know, the person that they're dealing with. Because the thing about private schools and boarding schools, and uh, I can speak from experience here because I went to to these schools. Okay, they always assume the moral high ground, and they're locked in the ideology that they've been indoctrinated in. And thankfully, I was never a collectivist kind of person, so I've always found myself um, distance from the crowd because I just hated crowds, and I hated when people congregate together. So yeah, I had the ability to detach myself from that, which is, I think it's just a stroke of luck in my personality. But then again, going back to the point, these leaders, because they can't put themselves in the shoes of another person, well, they can't empathize. So they don't understand what the other person is going through or how the other person sees the world in their point of view. Now, this becomes a serious problem when they deal with the other leaders of other nations who don't share in the liberal democracy brand that they um, espouse. I think all we have to really look at is the recent protests in Canada. Well, it's not so long ago, really. It's just a few months back, early January, when the truckers parked protest in front of the Parliament building in Canada. Well, what happened there? Did Trudeau negotiate with them? No, that's not what happened. Instead, what happened was he implemented these so-called emergency powers. Well, it's really a soft form of martial law in order to curb these protests, in order to stifle them. Yeah, did he negotiate with them? No. Did he even try to um, look at their concerns, their legitimate grievances? He didn't do that. He just went in and say, "Well, you can't do this." It's really insane. It truly is. I mean, by now you should realize that we're really not living in a democracy. You know, the government of the people, by the people, for the people. Yeah, because what what do you call a government when they don't listen to the concerns of the majority? Well, it's authoritarian, it's totalitarian, right? That's exactly what happened in Canada back in the early back in early January. And another consequence of not being able to empathize and to put oneself in the shoes of another person is, you're gonna have serious consequences, especially when you're dealing with other nuclear powered countries. And an example that really, it grinds my gears when I talk about this is the conflict in Ukraine, particularly how the Western leaders responded to it. And one particular person, that person just ugh, pisses me off that she's even foreign secretary. And if you don't know yet, I'm talking about Liz Truss. Jesus Christ, did you see her remarks towards um, Putin during the special operation in Ukraine? I mean, come on, right? She was trying to instigate, trying to escalate the whole situation. She wasn't trying to negotiate. She wasn't trying to be diplomatic. Come on, let's just stop fighting. Let's see what your concerns are, your red lines, your legitimate grievances. No, she didn't do that. And she's the foreign secretary of the UK. And the worst part of it is that she's running as prime minister right now. Oh my god. Ludicrous. So all she did was try to fan the flames of the situation and not try to negotiate with, Lavrov or Putin. Oh my god. It's a disaster. See, when you have these psychopaths and these really incompetent leaders running the most powerful countries in the Western democracies, you're screwed. And that's particularly why we find ourselves in this situation that we are in right now. We have soaring food and gas prices. Um, we have an incompetent leadership class. We have social unrest. We have insane social equality. It's because of these guys. People like Liz Truss. And the thing about these leaders is that the final point I want to make is that they don't really get penalized for their wrong decision making. At least apologize for their mistakes, or with the best information that they had or they have, they didn't make the right choice, or they never even take responsibility for their mistakes. They always blame it on another person, another party, or another group. Nor do they try to explain the rationale for their decision making. It's usually their explanation is based on some vague platitude. Yeah, and what can we take from this? The bottom line is the populace really has no power to influence the decision making process of politicians anymore. And I mean, I've already mentioned this earlier that um, the populace, the people, I mean, they really have no influence in the decision making process of the people in the upper echelons of society. And that's that's sad to begin with. At the same time, it the illusion of democracy, it melts right in front of your very eyes when you see how they've easily just taken down protests. They never even tried to negotiate with them. And, this is quite grim. I'm not trying to whitewash it, right? This is a very precarious time that we are living in. Our leaders don't even answer to us anymore because it's essentially a dictatorship at this point. And yeah, we're left holding the bag because look, these politicians, they don't have to worry about gas prices, food prices, or if a war breaks out because of them. They're protected. They're gonna be locked in their bunkers or some isolated place away from the major cities. Or when it comes to gas prices and food prices, they can pay um, for exorbitant fees. They don't care. So yeah, these three things, they've had a very easy lives. They lack empathy. They can put themselves in the shoes of the other person, of another person. And three, they don't get penalized for their wrong decisions. That's why the leadership class is extremely incompetent, weak, and just cuckolded.